So this is a two-season project with the commission piece being delivered in January, along with rehearsal tracks, which you're welcome to use or not. You know, it depends on if you're back full time and if you'd like to, you know, add your own phrasing and whatnot. You know, or you could use the rehearsal tracks and then, you know, change the phrasing or you know, the ritordandos or whatever, the way that you'd like to. But I will be providing rehearsal tracks, especially for those that might still be rehearsing virtually. So the first season is going to be basically just digging into the back end of the consortium. So, I mean, the commission. Whereas, you know, in a regular commission, well, there's probably different approaches. I would think that there is some, you know, research done on the topic by the choir before they actually sing the piece, or maybe they do the research simultaneously as they're learning the piece. In this case, we are writing the piece now. And so the choirs are actively involved, not in necessarily the actual note creation or lyric creation of the piece, but they're involved in the research that's going on and the discussions that are going on. We actually had our first pre-recorded discussion, which is listed here as the third one at Hats. We had that on Monday, and it was just amazing. It was so much, even more amazing than I imagined it was going to be. You know, we had Margaret and Alex, who are the photographers and the curators and the authors of the book, along with Sherry and Chantel and Tina Sayers, who is our along with Sherry, one of our curricular specialists, who are going to be developing the co-curriculum for, you know, so in other words, if you'd like to work with other teachers in your school, like if you'd like to connect this with social studies or with ELA or with language arts, there will be that opportunity to. We'll be providing PDF prompt sheets, which are being developed right now. So we did this recording on Monday, and like I said, it went really well. I'm in the process of editing it. These will be rolled out mid-September. The next one we're doing actually is tomorrow. This is one that I am deeply fascinated with, and that's scars. Chantel, why don't you share what our fascination is about the topic of scars and like the different levels that they exist in this?
So we would first have to start by talking a little bit about the photographs and the fact that they were in a box labeled damaged, and they've been set aside in preparation to discard them. These are very old plates that have been damaged over time, some of them almost beyond recognition, and others where they're still very clear. They just happen to be, I don't know, part of a group of plates where some of them were damaged and some were not. So it's really...
Chantel, I'm just going to jump in for a second and ask if everybody can see the full screen, like the pages that I'm showing right now. Okay, Chantel, I'm sorry, continue.
Oh, that's okay. So when we were looking at this, we realized that one of the really cool things about Hugh Mangum's work is he didn't really do anything to try to pretty people up or disguise who and what they were. When you see them, these photographs have been reprinted with just a remarkable clarity. You know how we normally will look at old photographs and, you know, they're very faded, they're blurry, they're a little difficult to see, and there's sort of like a sense of an awful lot of time passing between you and the time that that sitter had their portrait made. But these are different because they're so crystal clear. Their eyes are so steady. They really look like they could be people that you just saw in the store yesterday. So that at first is kind of startling. And then the second thing, when you see the damage on the photos where it's sort of like superimposed over the images and the actual existing scars on the people, it really makes you think about how not just these plates, but how we as people are scarred. We're scarred inside and we're scarred outside. We're scarred in the way that we present ourselves to the world and even the lens through which we see the world. And this is actually not necessarily a bad thing. It's, you know, scars are a sign of our strength and of our survival. And that's mimicked in these images themselves, just for their survival. They were marked to be thrown away, discarded, and thankfully rescued. So, but we feel like scars are really important part of this work, just intrinsically for Hugh Mangum's work, but also in the expression of the individual sitters. Did I say that right?
Absolutely, absolutely, certainly. So that's going to be our conversation that we're going to be coming up with, and you know, it's funny because you're going to be getting. Well, this conversation, I've narrowed it down, Chantel, to an hour and 5 minutes at past conversation. So it was an hour and a half. I was able to take out, like, you know, little chit chat and stuff like that that we did in between. And now it's an hour and 5 minutes. I was hoping to do a slightly edited 45-minute session and then the 15-minute session, which would be like the highlights of the conversation. Because, you know, if you're working with a middle school or high school, attention spans might not be one that they'll get through a 45-minute conversation with 5 adults talking about things as interesting as we might find it, you know. So 15 minutes we thought was a good proper time for, you know, for teachers to share the video before they begin their own discussion with their choir if they should so choose to do. So we're going to provide the slightly edited version and, you know, the 15-minute version. Right now, with the first conversation, there's so much interesting stuff that I've had an hour and 5 minutes, and I don't know how I'm going to take anything else out. So it might be a little more than 45 minutes. Although we did actually talk about a lot of different things, didn't we, Chantel? And some of those things might actually fit very well in future videos as well. Or else we might do some bonus videos. So again, there'll be 10 videos altogether. 2 of them will be live. One I will do, Chantel and I will do a conversation with each choir on our journey so far as, you know, as composer and lyricist, and answer questions. We'll do a Q&A. You know, and talk about the project. And then the other live session will be with Margaret and Alex, with either on myself hosting it or Chantel joining if she so desires. Or she's available at the time, I should put it that way. So that'll be, you know, Margaret and Alex talking about Hugh's work, which I think is going to be fascinating. That's open to the first 30 choirs that are part of this. If we can get it to 50, we will try to, but right now that's pretty much, their conversation is open to the first 30 choirs. It might be pre-recorded for the final 20 choirs.
Can I ask what you think the format might be for that? Are you thinking a Zoom?
Well, that's a really good question. I never really thought about that in terms of how that would work with public schools, and you know, I'm open to any format. You know, in other words, if the school has something that they need to use, then of course, you know, I'll make that work on my end. So I was thinking of, you know, creating a Zoom, just because I'm using Zoom for everything right now. I was you know, planning on creating a Zoom session, you know, for each of those, but that'll be dependent on the school.
I think one thing that might help, like what I'm thinking is I have probably close to 100 students that will be involved in some way with this project. They may not all sing it in the end, but they'll all do, I'm focusing my whole first semester around identity, and this is sort of like where I'm starting. This is like the centerpiece of the plan. So what I'm thinking is that I might get a certain number of representatives, either from different classes or different grades or different sections or something, and have them sit on the Zoom and record it and then have everyone else watch it. I don't think there's any way for me to actively involve all of my kids, but maybe we could, I could have an assignment where they submit questions for that Zoom that I could send you ahead of time or something like that, and then I could have everyone involved, but not on screen or physically involved. We're fully remote. That's
really interesting.
So,
yeah.
I think if you have, great idea. If you have school choirs in person, then it would be really cool and easy to do a Zoom or a Skype or something where you just come into the classroom. But I don't think I'm going to be in classroom for a while. So
right.
That could be cool.
It's a really good idea, and I wrote it down now too, because I'm sure that there will be other you know, choirs that, you know, and other schools that will have to work out these, you know, these details and logistics and everything. So thank you for that.
Cool. I talked a little bit with Will and Jenny and Christina this past week. We did a Zoom sort of talking about like how we want to center our ideas, and they gave me so many good ideas. I'm really happy. But we are all really close to each other too. There's no reason, if things, a lot of them are in school, there's no reason we couldn't, we'll be collaborating a lot among us. So there's no reason we couldn't join together on a Zoom too.
So the piece as it's delivered is going to be 5 movements long, 4 minutes each. You're welcome to program, you know, just one of the movements or 2 of the movements or all 5. It's, you know, you are a commissioning choir, so you have that, you know, flexibility as to what you like to program. I know I think North Carolina State is involving several different choirs where each of them are going to learn 1 movement to perform by themselves. Like if there's 3 choirs, they learn 1 movement to perform by themselves, and then they join together for 2 of the movements. Chantal and I were talking about like, well, the 5th movement, I think we're going to set it up so that everybody can sing together. Mm-hmm. And this is, I'm talking about multiple like different voicings of choirs. So in other words, if we have if we're setting it up for a combined performance, then Memento Vivere, the 5th movement, has to be able to be sung by an SATB choir with a 2-part choir, and a treble choir. And of course, that means, you know, we have to be sensitive to ranges and you know, and different ability levels and stuff like that for those. You know, having movements 2, 3, and 4 as ones that would not be performed together might allow me to you know, be able to bring out you know, for a treble choir more of a higher range, you know, and put it in a key that's, you know, comfortable for them. You know, Memento Vivere, you know, having the 5th movement being able to be sung by all of them means that it might be a little bit more accessible. You know, while still being interesting for advanced choirs, it'll be a little bit more accessible so that if there are choirs from the same school that are combining to perform on the final movement, they will all be able to do it. You know, so range is really important. The key is really important, and things like that. That works for all the choirs that would be involved in that performance. So I'm waiting to hear back from that, but that is probably going to be the way it is set up, so that movement 1, which you know me by my hat, and movement 5, Memento Vivere, will both be made so that they could be performed. Like I'm writing multiple arrangements, so there will be, you know, a treble voices version, SSAA version of Where We Find Ourselves, movements 1 through 5. And same thing, there'll be a 2-part version of Where We Find Ourselves, movements 1 through 5. And, you know, obviously an SATB. So, you know, so there will be, you know, multiple arrangements of the entire thing, but the ones that will be able to be performed together will be 1 and 5, movements 1 and 5.
So I don't know if anyone is familiar with this old concept of memento mori, which is remember death. This is a sort of a movement that took place in the Middle Ages, and it continued on until really like the early part of the Renaissance. I'm a historian, so it's just something that was of interest to me, and so I studied it a little bit. Memento mori was where people would begin to create effigies and have certain types of graveyard symbology that became a lot more like death oriented. You know how like if you look at really old effigies and even newer ones, people always had themselves portrayed in the blush of youth, you know, where they looked beautiful and they had their nice clothes and so forth. During this period of time, they started doing like skeletal effigies, and they began to have them like, you know, dressed in rags and so on. And this was like the rise of the danse macabre, and where, you know, it's like death is always among us. And the idea was, it sounds really grim, but the idea was to remind people that they needed to make sure they had their soul right. you know, because it was a way for someone to speak from the grave of saying, you know, as I am now, so you will be one day. So it's kind of grim, right? But there is a real beauty in these old effigies and in these old cemeteries when you see like some of the, it's beautiful, the art. And there is a great beauty even in their decay. So when I first started looking through Hugh Mangum's collection, I saw a lot of that too, because the images are so beautiful, even though a lot of them are damaged. You know, they have a certain amount of decay also, but they're beautiful in spite of it, and sometimes beautiful because of it. So that got us thinking maybe we would do something memento mori, but we wanted to say something more about survival, about overcoming the challenges that people have, the challenges they face then and the challenges we face now, which are so very similar. We think that by the separation of time that we don't have very much in common with these people anymore, but we really do. And in light of our desire to make this a positive and strong and upbeat final movement, we changed it from memento mori to memento vivere, which is remember life. And so I love the positivity of it, and that sense of moving forward and marching on and overcoming. So memento vivere, I'm very excited about that one, as you can tell.
Absolutely. And it's, hold on a second, sorry. It speaks to the idea of the fact that, Hugh Mangum blazed his own trail. You know, his family were a family of farmers, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And he chose to go into photography, and he chose to, subvert the narrative of the time by subverting the Jim Crow laws. And he chose his own path in a sense that he went to an all-girls school because that's where they offered photography. He never made a lot of money. He did what he did because it seems, at least, nobody got to interview him at the time, but he did what he did because he loved to do what he loved to do, and so I think that also sounds like it would be like something to acknowledge in memento vivere, in terms of live your life to the fullest and, love your life, and follow your passion.
There is another aspect of this to sort of bring this whole thing forward and really engage the singers. And that is including an additional aspect where people can include their own photos. So we live in an age where people kind of, we tend to point the finger at the younger generation that they're very narcissistic, always doing the selfies and stuff. We all do them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
But what about if the one picture that you're going to take on this day is the only picture that you've ever had taken in your life and the only one that you ever will take? How would you portray yourself? What would be the performance of your own life? What would you wear? What expression would you, try to put forward? How would you adjust your hat? How would you fix your hair? So in the day that these portraits were made, that very often was the case. For a lot of people, it was the first time they ever had their picture taken, and it might be the last time that they ever had it taken. So it was a big deal. And I love that there's kind of an educational aspect of it and a chance to think about how our own lives are reflected in the images that we're seeing and in the images that we present to the world. And I love that it sort of draws everybody in into, this larger collective of just humanity.
That one sentence you just said is so cool. Like, and we have to remember this when we're going forward, because I think this encapsulates so beautifully, like, so much of our project. What would be the performance of your own life? I love how you put that, Yeah. Don't forget that. I wrote it down just in case we decide to put that in the lyrics. But even if we don't put it in the lyrics, that's a great, like, overarching question, as to, like, how we focus ourselves in this project, in terms of what it can give each singer, in terms of you know, how do we want to make a difference in the singer's life? That's what we're constantly asking ourselves about this project, right? How do we want to make a difference? Like, how does this make it? How does this improve the singer's life? How does this make a difference? How does this help them become the most that they can become, right? And that question just kind of goes in line with all that. So that's really cool. I like that a lot. The platform that where you join, the platform is consortio.io. So consortio.io is started by a singer and a choir director. His name is Paul Rudoy. So he owns this platform, and this happens to be the page. If you go and you click search and you type in my name, you'll come across where we find ourselves, pandemic proof choral projects, or you could just search through choral and see all the different lists of different things, the different projects. And so basically you click on, join project in order to join. It directs you to create an account. I have a back end, as a composer, as somebody who puts together the platforms, my pages look a little different if I sign in here. But basically this will explain, everything about the project so far. I've updated it a few times, so it should be rather updated. But what I was going to say about this is, once you've joined, there actually is a way for us to communicate with each other through this portal, through this platform. So if I need to ask a question, or if you need to ask a question, we could just put it in there, and everybody will get a notification. All the teachers, all the choir directors will get a notification. Let's see. Let's just go in the back end, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So right here, it says post a comment. So, I won't do it now because then everybody will get a notification unnecessarily. But you can see I posted a comment here, and then a second one saying thank you to people like Brianne, who has already shared this project with some. Did you get the messages?
Yeah, they came in my email.
Perfect. So anyway, so yeah, so that's where you sign up. That's where you register. You could check out my profile. You could see testimonials of previous projects that I did, the Radium Girl, which actually Chantel and I worked on together. So anyway, thank you for coming on tonight. And Brianne, again, thank you for all the passion that you have about the project and all the work that you put into it. It's just going to make it better for everybody. So thank you for doing that.
Can I ask a question about the co-curricular, cross-curricular stuff real quick? Do you have any of those resources?
So originally Sherry, who is part of our team, was going to do this on her own, but because she's a professor down at Dallas College, she's a professor at at a college down. She's been on a lot of committees trying to get them to reopen, working on reopening and how that's going to work out and everything. So I brought on Tina Sayers, who actually is a choral singer in St. Louis, Missouri. And she's opened up her own company about writing curriculum, and so the two of them are going to be working together.
Because my kids meet with me every other day, and they go to another class on the opposite day. All my freshmen go to freshman writing on the opposite day. The guy who teaches freshman writing is also the drama director. We're friends. He messaged me yesterday, like, what are we going to do in this fall? And I'm like, well, I have a whole plan, but maybe I can pull you on board for this, because there's no reason. It could only amplify the way they experience the music to have them also writing about this stuff, So
sure thing, absolutely.
So I'd love to have him on board. My juniors go to U.S. history on the opposite day, but the teacher who normally teaches that class is on paternity leave, and there's a brand new teacher in there who just got hired this week and probably has no plans. I'd love to pull her on board to something like that, so that the kids have something like meaningful to connect with and not be sort of like floundering from the first day,